So we'll start with the first event of today. So more than 2 decades ago, when cloud was still just a buzzword, he had the vision to see its transformative potential and the foresight to recognize the security challenges it brings with it. As the co-founder and CEO of Cloud Security Alliance, Jim Reavis has built a global movement uniting industries to define how we secure the digital world. From shaping the first frameworks for cloud security to now leading the change in AI-powered cybersecurity. Without further ado, let's hear it from the CEO of Cloud Security Alliance, Jim Reavis, and we have a video from him.
Hi, this is Jim Reavis, CEO of Cloud Security Alliance, and I'm delighted to have been invited to provide some remarks for CyB, the Cyber AI Summit 2025, done by CSA Bangalore. So I wanted to give you just some little perspectives on what we are thinking about in this very big topic dominating our industry, cybersecurity and the AI race. So we've had a few months of some very fast-moving announcements that really tell us that the world is changing in such significant ways, and the multimodal, the reasoning chain of thought, this continued scaling that we are seeing of these systems tell us that perhaps we're reaching some sort of escape velocity of these things getting so much smarter, so much faster, so much more capable. We're seeing LLMs go out to the edge and a lot of distilled, fine-tuned models as well. So I think that my perspective when we think about this is it is the number one issue that organizations think about in terms of the business opportunities as well as the threats. Nations put AI at the very top of their national security agenda. And we're all wondering about this approach to artificial general intelligence and superintelligence. I like to characterize it right now as sort of the state of art being it can be very good at certain things. And I think we've heard the term artificial jagged intelligence, where something can be super smart and yet it has problems with very basic things like counting the number of R's in strawberries. So it's just gonna be, it's a fascinating ride we're all on, and it's definitely creating a lot of uncertainty. So I want to share what we're doing about it, what we think about this at CSA Global, and for everything we're doing, there's opportunities for you to be involved. So one of the first things is an educational program we're creating called TASE, our Trusted AI Safety Expert, targeted to be available in Q4, late October's, like maybe more narrowed down date. But we're trying to provide some grounding to cybersecurity, risk, GRC professionals, and what they need to be thinking about for AI security and safety. So some of you may be involved in the peer review process. You can go to our site and find out about that. Some of you I know have donated to this cause, and so we've been able to provide scholarships to other needy people to be able to get the education they need at no cost. So thank you for that, and check out TASE. So another area in this fast-moving space we're working on is agentic is seeming to be this very dominant area. We recently concluded an AI agentic security summit that broke all records for attendance at CSA. And certainly when we think about agents, agentic, we think about the autonomous nature or the amount of agency that systems have in terms of how they query, use LLMs, and what types of decisions that are made. And certainly this is part of like the promise, one of the biggest parts of the promise that it autonomously solves problems and takes a lot of the drudgery out of being a human in many cases. So we're thinking about this in terms of agentic and its autonomous nature and how it interacts with the rest of your information technology infrastructure as being this control plane. So we're focused on securing that control plane. And so these are things we're working on, and there's a lot of sort of fast moving areas where we encourage you, if you have a good idea on securing that control plane, that you look at it. We're going to try and have a lot of these things announced at our next online AI summit in October. But I just wanted to share a couple of areas with you. So one of them is when we think about agentic risks, and depending on how you're using things, you may be using AI in a very low risk manner. Like perhaps you are doing a single call for grammar checking in the application that you're developing. Well, that's very low risk, and we shouldn't need to have extensive scrutiny over that. On the other hand, you may be making an or have access to an AI system that is going kinetic, meaning it's controlling physical devices, it's working in laboratories with hazardous chemicals. And so the idea we're working on here is a methodology for managing risk called capabilities-based risk assessment. We essentially want to understand, what's the system criticality, what's the level of autonomy that the AI systems have, what do they have access to in terms of data and systems, what's the overall blast radius that looks like. And I think that can help us sort of tune where we need less or more controls and to do our governance correctly. So that's a work in progress you'll be seeing. So model context protocol is growing, and I think it's becoming the standard sort of framework for how you communicate from agent to system and agent to agents in AI. So this was a framework that was developed by Anthropic, but even their competitors have endorsed it. And so we've created a model context protocol security resource center, very new. I bet most of you have not heard of it. And this is intended to be something that's very action oriented. So not only are we doing the research, the standards, the best practices, but we're creating tools, a scanner to go scan MCP servers, vulnerability tracking for the MCP ecosystem, being able to enumerate and find different MCP systems out there, hardening tools so you can actually put in the guardrails. So we are excited about this. We've got a GitHub repo. You can go find it at our site, and we look forward to your contributions in it. So something that is probably the most heavily downloaded research artifact at CSA this year is the AI controls matrix. So I like to say that these are the AI guardrails you've been looking for. So we've taken cloud controls matrix, contextualized it for AI, and added a model domain. So it's very rich and very appropriate for you to use in developing or assessing AI systems, in that it covers that very important shared security responsibility between all the different actors. And it also maps to all the other standards that you're familiar with and maybe using. So this is the basically, I like to say it's the operational controls throughout the life cycle of your AI implementations that you can use. So if you haven't already dove into this, encourage you to go ahead and do that. So Star for AI is a very high priority project for us. So this is essentially extending CSA Star, which is our organizational certification program for cloud, and having it work for AI systems. Because again, AI is delivered by the cloud primarily. So this is something we've had in place since 2011, and this is the biggest change addition we've made to it. And so share a little bit about what we're working on here, so you stay connected with us. So this is sort of a high level roadmap for this. We've released our AI controls matrix. We did an AI pledge, which we have, oh gosh, maybe 150 companies that have taken the pledge to do trustworthy AI, which very well aligns with the AI controls matrix. We've launched Star Validated, which I'll talk a little bit more about that, an AI-based scoring. We've got a risk rubric tool, and something that's sort of interesting how we're thinking about this is because of the how quickly things are being spun up with AI. You're seeing lots of pilots and proof of concepts to think about how we build things, and so we've decided we could actually accelerate star level 2, which is our third party assessment and very rigorous, by combining ISO 42001 with our AI controls matrix. I'll break that down a little bit more for you. So let's go dive into some of these different components. So what is risk rubric? Riskrubric.ai, that's the URL you can go. We did a beta release of this at Black Hat. This is a scanner. This is a passive scanner of models that are allow us to provide sort of a scorecard, grade them based on defined risk criteria, and it's something we can always run. And so if you are curious about how good or how secure a model is out there, that maybe it's an open model, open weight model that you want to fine tune, distill, and use it for internal systems, but you need to understand how it works, then this is a great opportunity to have a resource for that. So just like for this is the example sort of report card. We're working more in the future releases to be more transparent and explicit about how this trust criteria relates to the AI controls matrix, but that's what it's based on essentially. So after risk rubric validated is something that we want to share with you that we're very excited about. So this is our AI scoring of our STAR self-assessments. And what you are seeing here is an assessment of our cloud assessment questionnaire, the cake, and this is going to work in the same way for our AI cake, which is part of our AI controls matrix. And essentially, we ask you to do the assessment, be very exacting in explaining how you address every question, and we go measure that. We use AI to go measure this. We've spent a lot of time working with this, and we found we were able to create prompts and scoring rubrics that were very consistent in how they were able to score all the different domains. So you can see this is a specific cake file that got reasonably good scores. You do find that a lot of them have challenges if they are not spending the time to articulate clearly how they address a question. So this has been out there for cloud, and it's something that we've seen a few companies already. If you go look in the registry, they've already had their entries validated. I believe Google Cloud was the first one to get the mark. So it's pretty interesting once we release this, and it's intended to be this star service that we've had other types of use cases where we've had large enterprises say, hey, can we use this? Can we use the prompt internally so that we can measure the cake files, the questionnaires we get, then they may not have gone through the process in scoring it. So we're going to go do it and see the details. And so that's one. And another example is just having GRC tool organizations license it to include it in part of what they do to help an organization build trust for the center, for example, things like that. So it's kind of interesting. We're going to continue to evolve it, and we're going to create this version of it that is going to be specific to the AI controls matrix. And we have a targeted date that that's going to be ready in mid-November. So that's going to be in conjunction with our AI, our early version of AI level 2, Star for AI. And so an organization that has got their cake file validated and they have an ISO 42001 certificate, they will achieve Star level 2 for AI. So I'm just going to leave you with just a few different sorts of thoughts there. So we've talked a lot about securing AI, showing governance around that, but we need to understand that there's a very big effort to reinvent cybersecurity. So one way we think about this is this 3 Cs framework, where we look at here's all the challenges we have and here's how we think about things. And the 3 Cs are context, coverage, and communications. And see this over time being delivered agentically with a lot of automation, still human in the loop, very much so, But you have to think of, we go back to first principles with cybersecurity through this AI transformation, and we find that this is like the top tool for what cybersecurity professionals are going to use. So to give you an example of like how you think about this, so you think about the context, and so maybe you are working with a new project, and the vulnerability scans show a lot of issues, but you don't see it as being in production, so maybe you don't make a high priority of fixing the vulnerabilities. But there's a Zoom call and they talk about, hey, that specific container, virtual machine, or whatever, we're going to put all the corporate jewels in it in a week. And so then it becomes a much higher priority. But we don't normally do that sort of correlation with Zoom, Slack messages, things like that. But AI is going to give us that coverage. This is just going to allow you to look at a lot of different, a lot more things, because it's like having 10,000 junior agents. And communications, it's the right amount of communications at the right time. So this is a little bit of more information about that, and it's about connecting the dots, and AI just does a great job at this. So I'm just going to leave you with just a few thoughts here. So, when we think about the implications to the cybersecurity workforce, it's really important that you show leadership. You need to understand this very well. You need to get educated, and the education is not going to stop. Events like this, and even using AI to say, hey, educate me on things, becomes really important. Understand we're going to go to sort of these first level sort of principles and think more about incident response and risk management, vulnerability management. And we're probably going to move away from a lot of the let's create new category names for every new iteration of technology. Understand the dual purpose use of AI, and the bad AI can only be defeated by good AI in so many instances. And really, take this last bullet to heart, that you should be the top experts of AI in your organizations, even more than the people that are building AI or deploying it as production applications. You need to understand it more holistically. So I hope you enjoy the conference. I've enjoyed having the opportunity to give you some information on my views. Love to hear from you on what you think. So let's go together on this journey, and let's connect what we're doing in Bangalore with what we're doing in CSA Global. So thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was co-founder and CEO of Cloud Security Alliance. Moving next, I would like to invite Babji VS, Satyavati Devadari, Pooja Agrawala onto the stage for our next, which is the keynote